8 reasons the UFC president is the best businessman in sports. UFC president is the best businessman in sports. Why do we say that? You may have heard that he is amazing, rational, logical, and a successful businessman, but do you guys have any idea why that's so? What are the reasons he is so known as the best businessman in sports? Well, let me tell you, viewers, the reasons are very interesting, as are the factual facts. So, are you all wondering what are these things? Well, you have landed on the right channel, MMA Guru TV. Watch our video till the end, and you'll know 8 reasons why the UFC president is the best businessman in sports. So let's begin. Dana White is the name of the one individual who had the vision. White started up as a fighter manager, but spotted an opportunity to buy the firm from its previous owners, the Semaphore Entertainment Group, in 2001. The UFC itself was a struggling corporation that appeared to be on the verge of bankruptcy and was just not catching on with the general public. Dana joined forces with his boyhood friends and Las Vegas millionaires Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, who jointly acquired the firm under the name Zuffa, leaving Dana as a 9% owner of what would later become one of the world's greatest sports companies. Needless to say, Dana and the Fertittas made an excellent decision. Dominance over the competition. The UFC, like many other organizations in today's sports world, has established itself as the obvious, unchallenged top organization in its own field. Dana White is mainly responsible for this, since he has been the driving force behind many of the UFC's innovations that have led to it becoming the brand name for MMA, such as utilizing the phrase ultimate fighting to represent the sport rather than mixed martial arts. This level of ingenuity can only be compared to the pro wrestling industry, where the WWE's Vince McMahon helped popularize wrestling. The UFC has decimated any and every opposition that has sought to compete with it, and the only organizations that exist are either brand new or recreated, or ones that have not attempted to steal any of the UFC's market share, such as Bellator. One significant barrier that is sometimes neglected is that when Dana and the Fertitta brothers took over the UFC, it was still widely seen as much too savage and insane to be shown in front of most viewers. Unlike the other main sports in America today, Zuffa had to convince consumers that their product was not only entertaining, but also safe. Consider what we are witnessing in New York in terms of penalizing problems that are occurring around the country. That's very much what Zuffa had to deal with. However, by their own hard work and persistence, Zuffa was able to obtain its first sanctioned MMA event in the state of Nevada, UFC 33, which also marked the promotion's long-awaited return to pay-per-view. Since that fateful night, the sport has spread to practically every state, and this was no small feat, and it should not be overlooked. Capability to create new stars. As good as things are in the Ultimate Fighting Championship right now, it's difficult to imagine that the organization has had ups and downs in terms of roster management throughout its history. Dana didn't always have the finest or the best to select from, snatching talent from other competing organizations at his leisure, utilizing the UFC moniker to attract competitors to work for less money than they may have gotten fighting in other promotions. No, there were occasions when things seemed dismal in certain divisions. However, White and others around him have been able to build new stars out of athletes who would not normally be considered seriously the best competitors in their weight class. One famous example of this occurred during the Pride versus UFC conflicts, when fans were attempting to decide which company had superior competitors. Everyone had an opinion, but when we look back, the difference between the top-level heavyweights in Pride and the heavyweights in the UFC was night and day. While the UFC was marketing a trilogy between Andrei Arlovski and Tim Sylvia, Pride was busy putting up massive heavyweight matches between the likes of Mirko Cro Cop and Fedor Emelianenko in their primes. Nonetheless, Dana and the UFC were able to persuade many fans that their heavyweights were on par with Pride's, with many believing Sylvia and Arlovski would sweep the Pride heavyweight class. Disciplinary actions. Other organizations have had severe issues with their athletes having difficulties off the field, resulting in bans, fines, and numerous other types of punishment. Not surprisingly, considering the nature of combat sports, the UFC has had its fair share of off-the-field issues involving athletes. The significant difference is how these events are handled. While the NFL especially skirts the issue, Dana White has been forthright and tough in his disciplinary measures. When Paul Daly delivered a late strike on Josh Koscheck following their bout, White fired him for good. Case closed, no debates. Dana withdrew Nick Diaz from the main event of UFC 137 vs. George St. Pierre after he regularly skipped press conferences and wasted the UFC's money on unused travel charges. Even better, disciplined UFC fighters nearly usually avoid repeat violations, which the NFL and other sports organizations haven't been able to accomplish. He gives fans the fights they want to see. It appears that there always have been battles and/or games in other sports that have been avoided for various reasons. Few other sports organizations can claim to have given the fans what they want more than the UFC, UFC, whether it's defending a champion or a significant team or program, reducing expenditures, or whatever other nonsensical rationale they come up with. We are presently expecting a pound-for-pound bout between Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre, but Dana White has done virtually everything in his ability to make that fight happen. It's simply that the fighters don't appear to be as invested in giving that fight to the fans as White does. Nevertheless, except for that one bout, there haven't been many misses, and White deserves a lot of credit for that. Global reach. It's difficult to criticize the UFC for preferring to broaden its horizons nearly entirely within the bounds of America. However, given their success in pay-per-view sales and other sorts of money-making activities overseas, the UFC has taken a genuine interest in expanding its brand all over the world. The NFL and other sports have dabbled with putting up games outside of America, but none have grown to the extent that the UFC has in recent years, particularly in recent months. Since the beginning of 2009, the UFC has conducted important events in Ireland, Germany, England, Australia, the United Arab Emirates, Canada, and Brazil. They also returned to Japan for UFC 144. This worldwide invasion has been a significant stride forward for the UFC, as they are not only establishing themselves in new areas, but also increasing the sport as a whole by attracting a whole new generation of young athletes interested in fighting in MMA. This has been a positive in the short run, but the long-term effects may not be apparent until a decade or more from now, when we can truly see how each country has seen the sport expand since the UFC opted to add their country to the calendar. Fan interaction. Certain sports clubs, and especially individual sportsmen, take pleasure in being readily available to their supporters. This helps them become significant fan favorites in their sport. While we've seen this work for players in other sports, the UFC has taken it to a whole new level with its incredible amount of fan involvement. It all starts with the fan expos that the UFC does before major events, where they give average citizens access to not just some of the greatest sponsor booths in new media, but also direct access to many of the fighters themselves. We're not just talking about unknown warriors, we're talking about top-level fighters who would be nearly impossible to get in other sports. But by trying the same thing with UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones, and you could receive an entirely different outcome. And if that doesn't work, you can always contact him on his verified Twitter account. He's usually on there almost every day, exchanging messages with his admirers and even some of his detractors. The UFC's gone out of its way to promote the use of different social media networks, primarily Twitter, to help promote the sport and, more specifically, the individual fighters themselves. The organization's even granted big monetary awards to fighters who have made the greatest use of such tools throughout a specific period. How long do you think it'll take for Roger Goodell to grant Chris Johnson the Best Tweet of the Year award? Don't hold your breath. The UFC is extraordinarily clever when it comes to advertising itself, and the way they've leveraged its athletes' identities and celebrities to promote the corporation itself is nothing short of amazing. It may cost the UFC some money to hand out these hefty incentives, but they easily make up for it in the extra attention and income generated by the fighters locating new followers via Twitter and other forms of social media. At the end of the day, MMA and the UFC exist only due to the demand produced by fans of the sport. Dana White recognizes this, which is why he is continuously giving back to the fans. Hey, that's all. Let us know in the comment box what you all thought about it. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and make sure you hit the bell icon to get the notification of our latest videos. Thanks for watching.